Yeah, sorry if I was talking a little fast in that, but I get like really excited about this stuff because people always feel like they need to do this the right way, and they get so hung up on doing it the right way. That's not fun. I get like Jesse goosebumps whenever I'm talking about it. Say what? Yeah, hey, that's fair. Well, the thing in the last cohort was they got super hung up on what folders were called, what files were called, what variable names were, and none of that really matters. And so I actually ended up, I wonder if I still have it on here. I ended up making this thing called My Dank App, which is just a little Node app. So I made this app and it works. I don't remember what it does, but it works. And then I made a second version where I just renamed everything to just completely weird stuff. So I think Shaniqua.js, I think that's actually the app.js. Oh, no, that's one of the models. Let's see, maybe it's Wonderbar. Yeah, here we go. And so you can see that all of this stuff is just named like completely weird stuff, like Sport Ninja and everything. Sport Ninja in place of app. But it still works perfectly fine. This app functions 100%, even though it's named completely batshit insane stuff. All right, cool. So we're gonna, let's get this thing set up together. So if you don't already have it open, please go ahead and open up your repo for this. And we're gonna get it working so that it at least shows artists. By the end of this class, we're going to try to be able to edit artists as well. But for right now, we're just going to make it show artists. So as your app stands, it should do just this when you go to localhost 3000, and that's it. But if you go to localhost 3000/artists, then you should get all of this JSON in here. Anyone having any technical difficulty? Yeah, Dan? Yeah, I already started it up. So just remember that you have to do nodemon app.js and then have mongod or mongod, whatever, running somewhere else.
Hey, load all the artists on it.
Say what?
When I go to the root, it loads all the artists on it. It shows them all on the page.
Okay, maybe you're in the wrong branch then? Are you in the master branch? So we're starting in the master branch. And the master branch should have not much in it. What's up?
So I run Mongo and I get some errors that I can still run.
What did the errors say?
Beta directory did not terminated.
Oh yeah, so Mongo's not actually running. So when you get that,
still works. Yes.
Yeah, weird. Do you have Mongo running anywhere else? Because I don't.
Yes.
All right. Cool. Dan, how's yours going?
I had to npm. I was getting this error. Well, first I got the error. Nodemon, then you go Nodemon app.js. Another error. Oh, okay. Is it weird? I don't know. I think I'm
All right, perfect. That's a
I like
great question.
Nodemon.
Yo, guys, really important question. By a show of hands, who prefers Nodemon over Nodemon? All right, go ahead. Nodemon. Yeah, I prefer Nodemon. You can say Nodemon if you want. But yeah, no, I have no idea. Actually, Dan, I made a Stack Overflow question about this because I have no idea which one is right. Like, which one do people prefer, Nodemon or Nodemon? It's probably Nodemon, but.
Anyways, does it do Nodemon or what's it Nodemon app.js?
If you just do Nodemon, then, well here, let me show you. So if I just do Nodemon, it might not work. Yeah, because it doesn't know what to do. See how here it's says that it's looking for index.js. Yep. So if you get something like that, then you need to do nodemon app.js. Samir?
What does the Mongo actually do?
So Mongo is like the blue elephant for Mongo. So remember the blue elephant for Postgres? It's the blue elephant for Mongo. You just don't get like this sweet little, you don't get a nice little blue elephant hanging out up there.
I turn it off and it works fine, and turn it on and it works fine.
Yeah, so
Yesterday it worked fine.
I'm not really sure why that is. That seems to be happening for some people where you don't have Mongo running and it still works fine. And I don't actually know why. Because I don't think that works for me. Maybe it does. I don't know. Let's find out.
For Postgres, and I turn it on, and then function like that, it will always be on. Is it like once you got Mongo, then it's not like also like
Yeah, I don't know. See, for me, it's not working. Like, I just turned off Mongo, and now my app's not working. So I'm not really sure why it works sometimes and it doesn't work other times. So I would say if it's not working, then just make sure that you have Mongo on. It's probably something with like multiple Mongo instances on your computer or something. I don't know. Andy pointed it out yesterday, and he was like, "Hey, don't I have to have Mongo running on this for it to be working?" And it was working without Mongo, and I was like, "I don't know." Anyway, all right. So we're going to go through and we're going to start putting this thing together. So I'm going to go through the lesson plan just like this. And there's going to be a lot of copying and pasting in here, and I know you guys did a lot of copying and pasting before, but we're going to be revisiting this stuff just to sort of explain it a bit more, flesh it out a little bit more, what's going on each step in the process. Lee. This thing, path in here? Yeah, so all it's doing is it's letting you do this. This is the only place that you use it. And so yeah, and so the whole purpose of this is just to tell Node where the public folder is. So if I do this, I put a console log in here. Console log, path, join. I'm just going to do dir name. No, I'll join it with something else. I'll join it with sup Lee. Then when I go back over here, there. So that's what it logged out, is this thing. So the whole purpose of it is just to tell Node what this path is right here so it can find stuff. We're really only using it for that public folder. Does that answer your question? Yep, that's exactly right. Oh, in here? Sure, I'm sorry. All right. Okay, so the first thing we need to do is put in some missing files in here. So we need a artist model, a song model. We need all those things in here. Not inside this models folder up here, but inside the public folder. So I'm going to create an artist.js. I could call this wombat.js if I wanted. It would just make for a really confusing app. Song.js. So I'm just creating 4 blank files: artist.js, song.js, artistview.js, and songview.js. I'm doing it right in Atom. In here, it's done with touch. You can do it either way. Say what? Well, so there are views and there are views. These are multiple views that take place inside one view. We'll get back to this in a second. When I say there's only one page, I mean the server is only rendering one page. The server is only rendering one HTML file. That's it. These views, the purpose of these is to put new bits and pieces of HTML into that other bigger HTML file. But we'll revisit that in just a little bit. Okay, so we just made a couple JavaScript files. Now we need to include those in the index.html, just like we would any other JavaScript file. So I'm just going to copy and paste this in here. I'm not going to Slack it out. You guys could totally just get it from the lesson plan if you want. All right. And so we've created 4 blank JavaScript files, and we've required them in here, or excuse me, we've put them in the HTML. Now I'm just going to make sure that this is working. I see your hand, 1 second. I'm just going to make sure that I'm not getting any 404s in here, that I can find all of those files. Yep, looks good.
Did you deliberately put it being BigQuery in the JavaScript side, or does it matter?
It doesn't really matter. Lee? Oh, at the highest level I can? So this models folder is for front-end JavaScript. This models folder is for back-end JavaScript. This models folder is used by the database. This models folder is just used by the web browser. That's the difference between them. Is that good enough? Awesome. Okay, cool. So when I refresh this page, I should get nothing in my console, whereas if I type this wrong or something, then I would get some kind of a 404 error in here. But I typed it right, so we are all good. All right, so now we need to actually set up the artist model. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm just going to copy and paste this in here, and there we go. So this doesn't seem very dry. There's a whole lot of this, blah, 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 equals info. We do that 4 times. We could actually rewrite this like so. Var artist equals function info, and then this dot info equals info. If we did it, well, doing it the first way, I can create a new artist. So var share equals new artist. And then I can do share.name, and that'll give me her name. If I do it this way, I would have to do share.info.name. So what's the reason we use this version instead of this version? They do the exact same thing. Why do we use the top one instead of the bottom one? No, even simpler. No, even simpler. It's less typing. 5 fewer characters that you have to write. That's literally the entire reason, is just 5 fewer characters that you have to write. Samir? You could, and we'll do that later on, actually. But yeah, that's really the whole reason, is I just don't want to have to write .info like 100 times. I'd rather just write .name instead of .info.name. Okay, cool. So this is going to, we're going to pass it in some info, and then it's going to set all these different properties. And now we are going to add this fetch method. So this fetch method, it's going to return all of the artists. Which method would this be like in Rails? Something that returns all of the artists. Kelly, you look like you're going to say something. Say what? No, not that each. That loops through a whole bunch of stuff. But what would just get all the artists out of the database? Exactly, .all. So this .fetch is just like artist.all. The only reason we're calling it .fetch is because it's some convention-y thing. Yeah, I don't actually know. Jesse had a reason for it, and I'll have to go back and check with him. I think it's more just to sort of keep them distinct. To keep distinct that this one is in the front end and .all is in the back end, but they do the same thing. So where should that go? Should it go in the artist view or the artist model or something else? It's totally written on the next line down here, so if you're looking in the lesson plan, you can probably see it, but that's okay. Sure, but why? Yeah, exactly. It does stuff with the database. And anything that does stuff with the database should go in the model. So we're going to put it in the model. I'm going to copy all of this and put it in there. So this looks scary. We just put in like 16 lines of code. And anytime I see that, I'm like, what's going on here? Who would like to volunteer to go line by line through this and say what's going on, what that function does in English? Or who should I volunteer? Maybe. Say what? All right. Well, okay, Lee, how about these 2 lines? What do these 2 lines do? Sorry, we're meeting in the middle. Just like, what do these 2 lines do? Right here.
Well, the first one we have an empty array, and then that fetch, we are
Oh, I'm sorry. I don't mean 7 and 8. I mean lines 9 and 10. Like, what's going on in lines 9 and 10? Just right here.
Yes. We're using some Ajax, and we're getting information from artists.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah. And then what's the purpose of this dot then? Why do we have that dot then in there? Yep. We're still on the second line.
It is our, it's what we do after if we get a successful call.
But why do we need it in there? Why can't I just just put this stuff on the next line without worrying about this dot then? Well, if I put it on the next line, if I didn't have this dot then, and it just ended like that, then this would execute right away, and that would be a bad thing. Why would that be a bad thing? Kevin? Yeah, so JavaScript works really, really fast. If we don't have this in here, then it's going to try to do all of this stuff before it actually gets the data back from the database. So that's this whole thing about asynchronous stuff. It's going to try to do all of this before it even gets the data back from the database. Because JavaScript, I mean, it switches between these lines in probably like 1/1000th of a second. Whereas this request is going to take like 1,000th of a second. And so there's still a time difference in there. So it's still going to try to run this before it gets the data back from the database. Putting the dot then in there is telling it, hey, only run this code once you've actually gotten data back from the database. That's what this response is in here for. That's whatever is going to be returned by the database. So we're saying only when this thing is successful, only when it's done, do we want to run the code in here. Wait.
You couldn't do that with calling another function with the information.
Within what? Sorry?
Just creating another function and calling it only after you get the information.
But how are you going to check like when you've gotten the information back? How can you tell when you've gotten the information back? That's the thing. Is like even if I just like in Rails we could do this. I could just put something on the next line that says like, okay, once I've gotten the data, then like I don't know, console log the data or something. But that's not going to work here because it's going to go to this line before this is even done. There we go. And incidentally, if you're wondering why like there is all this really annoying callbacky asynchronous stuff, I was actually kind of curious about that, and so I asked on Stack Overflow. I think I posted a. You saw that? Yeah. Yeah, that's pretty cool. Maybe I'll repost that. I don't know. Okay, cool. So, Lee, thank you. You got us through the first two lines. What's happening in here? So it's gotten the data back. Now what does it do in these few lines? Nah, Matt, I've heard from you a lot. How about Jen?
So in one call, we're set up and the team pushing the artists into the array artist file.
Yep, that's exactly right. So we're just taking all this data out of the response and putting it into this array right here. And then we have this fail thing in here in case it can't connect to the server for some reason. I don't think it's going to happen, but if it did, we would have that in there. And then we also have this return request thing down here. I'll talk about that in just a second. Okay, so we need to be able to get the songs as well. So I'm going to add this in. All right, and now something's a little weird here. So we just had artist.fetch, but now down here we have artist.prototype and then fetch songs inside that. So what would the difference be between artist.fetch? Well, here, I'll just say some method. What's the difference between that and artist.prototype.some method? I'm asking that way because this could also just be written like this. We only wrote it and that would do the exact same thing. We're only writing it this way because we're going to put more stuff inside this object later on. But what's the difference between these two things right here? right?
Prototype is a collection of functions or variables that is kind of available to what's called iteration of that purpose.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And instead of iteration, I would say instance. So anything you define with prototype, that is an instance method or variable or whatever. Everything you do with prototype is an instance, is for instances. These are class methods. So artist.whatever, that's a class method. Artist.prototype.whatever, that's an instance method. That's the entire difference between the two. It kind of sucks that it uses prototype instead of like .instances or something, a little bit more intuitive, but that's really all it means. Prototype is just for instances. So how come .fetch is not inside a prototype and fetch songs is inside the prototype? How do we do it that way? Yeah, so fetch songs is inside prototype. That means it's an instance method. Fetch is not inside prototype. That means it's a class method. So why is fetch a class method and fetch songs is an instance method? Aurelia? Can you flesh that out a bit more? You're on the right track. Well, okay, good enough. What I would say is that any class method, you use that when you want to do something with or to, like everything of a particular class. So in this case, fetch, it is getting every single artist. You use an instance method when you want to do something with or to only one particular instance. So fetch songs, if it was getting every single song in the database, then maybe it would be a class method. But it's not. It's getting the songs just for this particular artist, for one particular artist. That's why it's an instance method. So instance methods, again, are for when you want to do something with or to one particular instance. Class methods are when you want to do something with or to every instance. Does that make sense? All right, cool. This also looks like, like a big, scary piece of code, but it's actually almost the exact same thing as we did in fetch. You can see there's a lot of stuff that looks similar. So there's the URL, there's the request, and it's looping through it, and then there's a fail message down there. It's the exact same process, it's just with a slightly different API endpoint up there. Questions so far?
Why do you need the new song? Are you constructing a new song anytime you grab the data?
Oh, right here.
Yeah.
Yeah, so every time we do this, we could just do response just like that. Then what that would do is it would just put that raw JSON into this array. But maybe we want every song to have some kind of a method, some kind of an instance method or something. Or maybe we want to change the data somehow. Like we've got the raw JSON from the database, and then we want to make sure it's all capitalized or something. In that case, this is the easiest way to do it. This is taking that raw data and then it's putting it inside this JavaScript object that can have methods and variables and everything attached to it. So for tuner, for this one, I'm not sure it really matters actually, but for something else it might.
You're going to put everything, instead of just leaving it the way it is, you're going to put everything and how you define it.
Yeah. I would always use a model. Actually, we do use this new song because each song has its own view. And the way the view is attached to the songs is through this song model right here. If we didn't have that, then we'd probably have something like var song and var song view or something, and that's, well, actually, that's basically exactly what we have. Never mind, scratch that. But we would probably end up with a whole bunch of like global variables for songs that we don't really need. This way we can sort of package them nicely inside this song model right there.
Is there a specific reason you get artist.all outside of the array outside of the function, and you put artist.song in the array in the function?
Yeah, great question. So this one out here, this artist.all, that's an array into which I'm going to put all the artists, right? So this fetch function, it gets all the artists and it pushes all of them into this .all. Down here, we want to associate all the songs with a particular artist. So what I've done here is I'm taking that particular artist and then I'm putting an array inside it of songs. And so now I can put all the songs inside that array, which is inside that artist. That's how I'm sort of associating them together. Does that make sense? Yeah. Okay, cool. All right, let's see. So we can get the artist data, but we can't make it show up on the page. So we need the artist view for that. So I'm going to copy this wall of code into the artist view file. All right, so the weirdest part of this, I think, I know this is a lot of code, but this artist template thing, this is basically just HTML. Like the whole purpose of this is just to spit out some HTML. That's all it's doing. It's just writing a whole bunch of HTML, putting the artist name in there and the artist photo URL, and then spitting it back out. That's all it's doing. Nothing too crazy. And render, the job of render is to just take this HTML, which is spit out by artist template right here, and make it show up on the page. Why does this L have a $sign in front of it? It doesn't have to. That $sign doesn't do a thing. We could delete that, and as long as we change all the L's everywhere on the page, it would still work just fine. So why does that L have a $sign? Any thoughts? Samir? Yep, it's because we're making this thing with jQuery. You see that we've wrapped this in cache. We have a little $sign over here. So all this is doing is it's just a visual cue telling us, hey, we made this element with jQuery. It has no purpose other than just to be a visual cue. There's no like magic going on in there. Yeah, that's exactly right. L is short for element. Yep. Yeah, sorry about that. L is short for element. Oof, man. Yeah, well, let's find out. Let's see, is there anything in... Well, actually, there's just one bit left, so I'm going to do that last bit, and then we'll sort of trace through how it's all fitting together. So the last bit, this is like all of the code that really does stuff, but if we refresh this page, it still doesn't do anything. That's because there's nothing actually saying, hey, actually start doing stuff with the database. There's nothing saying, hey, actually start running. That's the job of this script.js file, which currently is not doing anything. So I'm going to copy this last bit in here. Whoops. There we go. And now I just want to check to make sure that it works. Hopefully, I'll get a whole bunch of artists. Yeah, there we go. All right, cool. So this is saying first, fetch all the artists, and then for each artist, render it. So it's getting all the artists, and then for each artist, it's rendering that artist on the page. And so this is why we have those two different views, or well, why we have this views folder. We don't have one down here because these views aren't really being rendered by the server. Instead, they're being rendered by the browser. When we say view, in the past, we've meant like an entire page of HTML, basically. But in here, it's not an entire page of HTML. This is a view, this is a view. Each artist has its own view inside the page of HTML. View doesn't mean an entire page. View just means a piece of HTML. So you can have a view that's just like, one line long. All right, so it's going to, so it's looking through all these artists, and then it's creating a new artist view from that artist. So it's taking this artist that was just created, passing it in to the artist view, which is then creating an element for it and rendering it. So it's creating an element for it, making some HTML down here, and then just making all that spit back out on the page. Let's see, does this have songs yet? Nope, we haven't actually built in anything for showing songs yet. We have the button for it, but it doesn't actually do anything yet. So currently this just does stuff with artists. All right, so that's sort of walking through all the steps for that. So what can we go back and look at again? Dan, did you have something?
Matt, your iOS also one
Ah, where'd you go?
I want to do it again.
That's odd. No, it's just once for me. I don't know, but I can come take a look at that. Repeats. Oh, then you're going to have 4? That's interesting. I don't think so. We copied the same code, I think, right? Huh. That's really weird. I'm not sure why that is. No, I was just doing it once. So you go back here and refresh, and it's just once. So maybe there was something in there. What may have happened is that maybe like one of these things got copied in there twice or something. I don't know. That would be my guess. Beyond that, I'm not entirely sure. But that's okay. It's not really a big deal because there is a read branch of this repo which has all of this stuff done for us. And so I just wanted to walk through the process of rendering artists, and then we're going to check out over to that read branch, and it'll have all the artists and songs and stuff in there, so we can move forward. But let's just talk about the code that's going on in here for now. Yeah.
What happened to other people also in the index? Everyone got in case of the script.js came to us.
Oh.
In your index HTML, they had 2 script.js.
Oh, let me try that.
Well, I don't know why they run 3 times.
Yeah, check that out. Yeah, I'm not sure why that runs 3 times either. Oh, you know what? It's because the first time it loads all the artists and pushes them into that that artist.all array, right? The second time the script loads, there's already stuff in that artist.all array. So now it has twice the number of artists. When this first script is done loading, that first script is going to render out. It's going to render out artist.all. The first time, that is these 5 artists. The second time, it's 10 artists. It's double the number of artists. And so it ends up printing out 15 in total. Yeah, but that just comes from having the script in there twice. Ooh, that scared me. Okay, cool. Yeah, Brendan.
Do all class methods need callbacks?
No, no, you can have a class method that's like, let's see, what would be a good one? Well, I'm not sure this is a good one, but I could do something like artist.number of artists.
Do all Ajax requests?
Oh, I would say so, yes. I can't really think of any that wouldn't. The only reason you wouldn't is if there isn't anything you want to do after that request has been made. But if there is anything you want to do after the request has been made, then you do absolutely need a callback. Andy?
A little bit like a big thing, but I don't want to use the word callback.
Ah, you're right. Yeah, so a promise is, a callback is used inside a promise most of the time, though. Cool. The last thing I want to point out or ask about is why do we return request in here? What's the purpose of this return request? And let's take a look at what happens when we don't have that in there. I'm going to open up the console, and then I get cannot read property then of undefined, and it's pointing to script.js line 2. So it's saying it can't do this then. Why not? From here? Yeah, we don't return anything from this function, but why do we have to return something from this function? Like, what's so special about this request thing? Yeah, yeah, no, that's exactly right. So this request, remember, it doesn't represent like the data or anything. What this represents is like the state of talking between the browser and the server. So I would say an analogy would be like, it's sort of like a phone conversation. Like it's sort of like the state of a phone conversation. It's not the text that's being said in the phone conversation. It's like the status of the phone conversation. So like a phone conversation could have like the status could be, I don't know, happening, or the status could be hung up. And this request, it can have a whole bunch of different states. It can have a whole bunch of different statuses. The reason we return it is because we want to be able to say .then. We want to be able to say that when the request is done. We want to be able to say here, basically, .then, just like that. The only way we can do .then out here is if we get this request. So if I don't return this, then the request isn't available here. If I do return it, then this artist.fetch, that's actually the request. That's actually what's going on there. So I can do request.then. So I can still say when this request is done, then I want to do some stuff. Samir?
So that request, instead of the request, is the AJAX call.
Mm-hmm.
We want AJAX, so we can basically return the request, so the request is defined by.
Well, so the request is defined right from the start. Remember, the request is like, it's like the conversation. And so what it's returning is like the state of the conversation happening. And it can return that instantly. So I can check out here and see like, so now I have the conversation, and I can check, hey, is the conversation done? No. Is the conversation done? No. Is the conversation done? Yes? Oh, sweet. Then I'm going to do all this stuff. Yeah, yeah. So it's returning that deferred object. We would get like, we'll return some here. And then I'm going to get that, but my server's restarting. There we go. Artist.fetch, blah, 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 .then is not a function. It's not a function because now artist.fetch is equal to Samir. And Samir doesn't have a .then. Wild, right? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yep. And you can chain however many .thens. You can chain an infinite number together. There's no limit on the number of .thens you can have together. So I could just keep on going. And you may be sort of wondering why. Like, this is kind of a pain in the butt. Like, this is starting to get into callback hell, where you have a whole bunch of callbacks and you don't really know what each one is doing. So the reason for that, the reason we're using .then is because, well, of this. So check this out. Let's say I wanted to have some sort of a web page that first is going to make a Google request about, I don't know, a movie. Then it's going to make a request to IMDb to look up some stuff about that movie. And then it's going to make a request to Netflix to actually show that movie. So it has to have 3 AJAX requests that happen in order. I could do something like .ajax URL, HTTP, Google, and then AJAX has this, you can put this parameter in it, so function, response. Okay, cool, so now I want to do my next one. I want to do a request to imdb.com, and then when that's done, I want to make a request to Netflix. So now I'm going to do that in here, AJAX URL, HTTP, netflix.com, and there we go. So you can see how I'm sort of gradually working my way like to the right across the page here. The whole reason we use .then instead of doing it like this is because it looks a lot nicer. That's literally the entire reason. From a performance standpoint, it doesn't make any difference. But from a code readability standpoint, I don't think this is very easy to read at all. And if I keep on going with this, eventually I'm going to end up with like that much room to write over on the right-hand side of the page, and that's not going to be very pleasant. So what I've written right here is the exact same thing as .ajax URL Google .then, oops, return Ajax URL IMDb .then function response return Ajax URL Netflix. This response is the response from Google. This is the response from IMDb. I could put in another .then if I wanted to. That would be the response from Netflix. And I can just keep on going like that. I think this looks a lot neater than this, right? It's this weird sort of pyramid thing going. But again, it doesn't make any difference from a performance standpoint. It's really just to make stuff look nicer on your page. Questions about that? Okay. Thank you for letting me know, okay? All right, awesome. Why don't we take a break there and come back at 10 till? So that's in 8 minutes by this clock.